Hey, this is Dr. Paul Dyer. Welcome to Bridges Live, another podcast. You know, you can always reach me at drpaulholisticscience.com. And I'd like to thank all my sponsors for allowing me to put on Bridges Live. You can always join the sponsorships if you want. You can contact me directly at drpaulwdyer@gmail.com, or you can just contact me through the webpage. But let's first get into the podcast, because the podcast is very important. It's about understanding information and maybe putting your life into an action. With this new year coming upon us and this podcast coming out, whether you hear it this year, next year, 2020, just to let you know, we send all our blessings and love and understanding, but let you know, don't let your emotional depression keep you out of your passion. So I have Mr. Patrick on the line. And Mr. Patrick, please introduce yourself to Bridges Live.
Hello, Bridges Live. I am Patrick Dailey.
Patrick Dailey. So thank you. So, you know, when I contacted you, it was such a refreshing view because, well, let's tell people about what you do. Then people understand, like, oh, that's why Dr. Paul contacted Patrick Dailey.
Certainly. Well, Patrick Dailey is a professional opera singer and college voice professor and director of opera performance and training and outreach at Tennessee State University.
Man, you know, so where did you grow up, Mr. Patrick? Did you grow up in the South, or are you from any other place? And how did you gravitate to Nashville, which is like, you know, the land of music?
Well, I'm actually from Nashville, born and raised.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah. So, and people who are moving here now, because the city is experiencing so much growth, when I say I'm from Nashville, they always say, oh, you're what do you call it? They call us unicorns. They say you're a unicorn. So that's the thing now. But I am a native Nashvilleian, although I did my studies and my training on the East Coast. I'm very much a Nashvilleian.
Okay, because I'm a New Yorker by heart, passion, and life, so myself. So when people say East Coast, are you meaning New York? Are you meaning like in the Boston area, or
Yes. So specifically, I have my undergraduate degree at the, as we always say, at the Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yeah.
I received my BA in vocal performance with a minor in dance education, and did my master's at Boston University in Boston, Massachusetts.
So cheers
in vocal performance.
So cheers to Morgan State, you know, being one of those premier black colleges here in Maryland. And then boo to Boston. That's because I'm a New Yorker. I have to say boo to Boston. But I do know Boston. I have much love for a lot of things that they have. I just have to say that being a New Yorker Yankee fan, it's ingrained in me. It's a habit. So
you have no choice.
I have no choice. So now that that's out of the way, one of the things that, because this is radio, people will go onto your website and try to follow you, and I hope that's what they do. To remember, we're talking to Mr. Patrick Dailey on Bridges Live. You are a young black male. How was it for you to get into opera? Because that's not something. It's kind of like you had to have been one of the few black males in the room studying opera.
Well, you know, in a sense, that is what I have more so experienced, I guess you could say, from about, that has been the primary experience in the professional field,
okay,
if you will. But in my development of my artistic journey, that has not been the experience. Which leads this all, and I'm going to try to make this story as succinct as possible, but there's so many circles and there's so many dots that are being connected through my journey and that continue to be connected through my journey that you'll see what I mean. Like I said, I'm from Nashville, born and raised. I always like to start and say that and invoke my ancestors, especially the ancestors that I know. I'm the great-grandson of West Tennessee sharecroppers. my Pearl and Daddy Fred Slocum. They were in West Tennessee and East Tennessee outside of Memphis. And they raised my mother and four of her siblings on their sharecroppers farm. From there, my mom came to Nashville to attend, at the time, what was Tennessee A&I State University in Nashville, and making her the first in the family to go to college. She stayed in Nashville and at Tennessee State, met my father, and, you know, in a few years later, like considerably a number of years later, I was born. I was also born and raised, and I still am a member of the church that they were members of when they were in school at Tennessee State, which is right at the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church, which is basically right in front of the university. And so because of, and then you also, if you know anything about Nashville or understanding about particularly Black Nashville, and what we know of would be North Nashville, or as we would say, North with an F, Nashville. Jefferson Street connects three of the four HBCUs in the city. Tennessee State at the very end on John and Mary Boulevard, go further down, and of course there's Meharry Medical College, and across the street from Meharry Medical College is Fisk University. My church family, particularly my nanny, she was nanny. She was literally my nanny. She was the mother of the church that raised me, and my mother went back to working in education. And that's important too, because my mother is a noted educator in Tennessee and around the country. She went back to work after I was born, about 5 months, and Nanny, who was in the choir at the church and involved in all sorts of things, she was the first to recognize me singing at 3 years old. They say I started singing at 3. And so Nanny got everybody in the phone and said, okay, he's going to be in the children's choir, and we're just going to just do that. And so that's where it really started. Now, my mother also being an educator, and because of her education and her knowledge of what it takes for young people to be successful, she was also very open and willing and interested in ensuring that I had a lot of well-rounded experiences. And so because I had this interest in music and singing and the arts in general, she put me in several performing arts programs, acting camps, visual arts camps, and one of them being a program called Met Singers, M-E-T, Met Singers, of Choral Arts Link, led by a woman named Margaret Campbell Holman, and that would put these young people in Metro Nashville Public Schools on the stage with the Nashville Symphony every year, and also some other programming that was very special in the city, and great opportunity. So that's where a lot of that interest in going into classical music sort of started. The other thing that inspired me, there are 2 points, with so many you'll see, because everything is so connected to community. A few things that, the first thing I remember as sort of a spark was when I was in elementary school, I can't remember exactly the grade, but we did sort of a tour of Nashville. You know, when you're in elementary school, at a certain grade, they take all the elementary kids around and say, oh, these are the great things culturally that happen here. And that's what they did. Oh, here's this historic place. Here's that. They do it to everybody. I see it in New York. I see it in D.C. They take everybody everywhere to show them. And they did the same thing in Nashville for us. And they took us to the Ryman. They took us to historic points of the Civil War and, civil rights movement and stuff. And then they took us to a concert at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center where the Boys Choir of Harlem was performing. And I saw this group of black boys. And I said, oh, they're just like me.
Yeah.
I sing. I do exactly that. That's cool. It just made sense. We weren't able to stay the entire time, but I remember just being like, oh yeah, that's me. That makes sense. From there, I discovered the Fisk Jubilee Singers at Fisk University, and I became very, very, dare I say, even obsessed with the Fisk Jubilee Singers, with that legacy, with that history, even with that sound, with that approach. I was drawn to it. So, from elementary school, middle school, and such, I went to high school, and I attended the Nashville School of the Arts, the Performing Arts School in Nashville, public magnet Performing Arts High School in Nashville, and was, of course, in the vocal program, but I also minored in dance at Nashville School of the Arts. Everybody in the school knew all my friends. It's a small school, and so we're all very close. And so all my friends knew. Here goes Patrick talking about he want to be a Jubilee singer. Child. Here he go again. And really, when I started at NFA, my intentions were to sort of be sort of like an R&B pop singer, commercial artist in the vein of say Usher, Chris Brown, guys like that. That was really my intention. I was going there. That's why I was like, okay, I'm going to dance, I'm going to sing, and that's going to get me right. But yeah, that's not what happened. I go through the program. Of course, hearing the Jubilee Singers more and more, I'm like, oh, I like that sound. And so my sort of career started to develop, and my thoughts about what I really could do changed along the way. So one of the things that happened, of course, everybody knew that I wanted to be a Jubilee singer. But I also started getting interested in other black college choirs and vocal programs. And so another thing that I saw, there was a PBS special that came on in Nashville, and it comes on all over the country often, the silver anniversary of the Morgan State University Choir, celebrating really Dr. Nathan Carter's time at Morgan.
Yep.
His 25 years. And I watched that, and I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. All of these amazing black voices, mostly black. There were a couple of non-black folks up there as well, but all of these amazing voices, students and alums, and they just went down and they showed all of these people who were singing at the Mets and who were singing and having their own careers in jazz and gospel and musical. They were just, they were brilliant. And I said, oh, that's really cool. In that video, there was also a man named by the name of Ernest Saunders. And Ernest was, in our history at Morgan, we learned of Ernest being the first countertenor of the Morgan State University Choir. And that is my voice type. I'm a countertenor. So I heard Ernest singing If I Could Help Somebody, Dr. Carter's arrangement. And again, it was a point where I said, that's me.
That's me.
I started to connect to that sound, to that to that experience. I said, that's me. So from the Boys Choir of Harlem to the Fisk Jubilee Singers to now singing, a video, a presentation on television of them, and also to that point of PBS. Another thing that really inspired me were the three tenors, which later became Cook, Dixon, and Young, and that was Victor Trent Cook, Roger Dixon, and Thomas Young, three African American singers with careers that spanned genre, from opera, musical theater, gospel, everything, and their show does that. And I said, again, I saw the three of them, Victor being a countertenor himself, as well as Roger and Thomas being brilliant tenors and singers and artists and musicians. I just said, oh my God, I could do that. They made sense to me because they could sing that and they could sing everything. So down the line, of course, everybody knows I want to go to Fisk. So back in high school, one of my dear friends and little sisters is her aunt is the head, or what at the time was the head, I think it is, still is, the head of theater at Fisk University, Persephone Felder Fentress, and my friend Christina Fentress, who's currently with company XVII, a large Baroque opera and performance company in New York. She's right now killing it, the game. She said, "Oh, Pat, you should come." And my nickname also was like Bishop Jubilee. For some people, they call me that. Bishop Mac. My friends were so awful. They were like, "Oh, here you go, Bishop Jubilee." But they weren't wrong. They said, she was like, "Yo, Pat, come to Fisk. The school, Fisk is doing the Gospel of Columbus, and they need more people. So you should come and audition and do the show with us." Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me go back a little bit. Before that happened, again, as I said, I was very interested in the Black college choirs. Mm-hmm. I heard, of course, I had heard the Jubilee Singers, and I went to everything that they did in Nashville. And even to that point, I want to bring up a story, too. One time, my grandmother was visiting Nashville, and my grandmother, who is still living, she is 92, and Freddie Mae came with us, and in those days when my grandmother was coming up, she had children at what we would say is an early age. Mm-hmm. Of course, that was not uncommon back in the. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it wasn't uncommon.
It wasn't uncommon, back in the, we're saying the 30s, and we're talking 30s, 40s, and stuff. It wasn't uncommon, we would say, oh, that's too early, but it wasn't uncommon, especially in the country. And so, you just grew up differently and quicker in those days, especially with what African Americans were subjugated to. And so but I've always known that my grandmother had a great voice. If you know the history of like Black gospel quartet sounds, especially in the women's groups like Caravans and Roberta Martin singers, the Davis sisters, they would talk about, you got that one woman that's the high notes, and she's the highest soprano. That's my grandmother. And so with her having that sort of sound, though she had that sound, she, of course, did not have the opportunity to study. So my grandmother came to Nashville. She was visiting with us. And, of course, we were going to a Fisk Jubilee Singer concert because that's what Patrick wanted to do. We sat there in the chapel at Fisk Memorial Chapel at Fisk University. And I'm sitting between my mom and my grandmother, and the Jubilee Singer starts singing. And my grandmother says, "Wow, I could have been me."
Yeah.
But I didn't know. That's my voice. Hearing the soprano singing like that, she was like, "That's my voice." And so I've always kind of kept that in the back of my head as a part of what I do, having the opportunity to study as I have, and train and learn and perform. It's always been so sort of there. So again, the HBCUs and Black community and family and the village is all tied up through this narrative so far. Now, the Morgan Choir came to Nashville, and I was like, oh, okay, I got to go see this concert. So my mom and I went out to Franklin, Tennessee, where the concert was held in the church out there. And again, in this concert, I was blown away by these voices. I had never heard voices like that. And then the concert was so varied. They sang everything. I mean, I remember they sang the Lobosong by Mendelssohn. They did a setting of Hallelujah or Alleluia by an Eastern European composer that was not easy. I have the score now, and I looked over the other day. I was like, oh yeah, this is tough. They sang everything, and then they sang a gospel set. They sang a set for Porgy and Bess. In that concert, there were 3 countertenors, and they all sang something different. The first one sang a piece from the Mendelssohn. The others sang...
Which is a hard piece in itself.
It's a hard piece in itself. He sang he was one of the soloists in the duet of the Lobosong, of the I Waited for the Lord. Of course, that's the English translation. The other sang a gospel song, and He Blessed My Soul. And then the last sang the hymns, Dr. Nathan Carter's hymns. He sang, I want to say, he sang Great Is Thy Faithfulness, and might have sung If I Could Help Somebody as well. I can't recall, but I know they all sang something in the concert, and they were all different, all beautiful. And I said, again, wow, that's me. I heard myself, and I said, I need to know more about this place. That's probably where I should be going. At the same, as that's happening, one of the organizers and presenters of the concert comes out, and this very tall, dignified, larger-than-life black man by the name of William Krim comes out and says, well, you know, we are sad that we lost Dr. Carter a couple of years ago, but we are continuing our support for Morgan. You know, Dr. Nathan Carter was one of my best friends, and he told stories about how he and Dr. Carter have helped to develop the programs and the things that they do for Morgan through here in Nashville, as well as what they do for an organization that he was one of the heads of, called Salama Urban Ministries, which was an outreach program for black youth in Nashville, particularly South Nashville. And their performing arts component, and also, you know, talking a little bit about his own career and what he's done as a singer and an artist and educator. And so as I'm saying, oh, wow, this school is amazing, my mother is there next to me saying, I pray my son gets to work with that man. So now, at the high school, everybody says, come do the show at Fisk. I go to the audition, go to the rehearsal, and who is sitting there as the music director is Mr. Krim. And I said, oh, okay, cool. I'm not even recognizing all the dots being connected. We do the show, we go through it, and as the last shows are approaching, he says, okay, so you're going to come study with me. You're going to work for me at Salama as a performing arts intern in the summer. I'm going to pay you. And, that's the end of that. So that was my first job, doing exactly what I love doing. And there was my second teacher, because my first teacher was Stephanie Wise Cunningham, who was a former Jubilee singer and was the minister of music at my church at Friendship. But then he became my teacher. And so Mr. Krim is also the one that actually made me a countertenor, because he heard and knew how I sang like the other genres, because I'm naturally a tenor. So he said, no, you're going to do this. You're going to, let's just stop all of this. We're going to line the entire voice up.
So, being a musician by passion, and I wanted to be my trade, I want you to explain just a little bit so people don't get lost. What's the difference between a countertenor and a tenor?
Yes. All right. Well, it's probably easier to say what a countertenor is in some ways. So a countertenor is a male singer that sings within the register of a you could say an alto, or somewhat of a contralto, mezzo soprano or soprano. Right. With the primary use being in the head voice or the falsetto. So there are a couple of terms. So falsetto, again, Italian term, false voice, basically, you could say. And then with the falsetto for men, because women don't have a falsetto. Men have falsetto. Yes. And that's because the vocal folds, so for women, when they go into what would be the head voice, both vocal folds are vibrating consistently. Correct. For men, when we go into the head voice, into the falsetto, only one vocal fold is vibrating. So it means that it takes more breath, body, and air support to sing there consistently, to also produce, a clean, resonant, spinning sound. Now, for a tenor, and I often say when I'm teaching, so the idea is to bring, you're thinking of, for let's go back to countertenor, because that's what I do. For countertenor, it's almost talking about bringing the head voice or the falsetto down and melding that into the chest voice, to make a clean transition. For tenor, it would be saying, let's use the chest voice, or the natural will be called modal voice. Modal voice. And transitioning that into the head voice to develop a mix up. So you're thinking about chest voice or motor voice moving into mix, moving into head voice, as opposed to countertenor, head voice down into a mix, down into chest.
So for most of you people who are just, if you're still lost a little bit, what I would like to, because when I was studying music, and one of my undergrads is composing, composition, and theory. So I'm all over it like jelly and peanut butter right now. I'm just like oozing. This is amazing, right? But most of you people, if you want to look at some of these artists who are singing, the one person that sticks out in my mind who did it, a countertenor the best, was Prince.
Prince is one, and Prince used, Prince is interesting because Prince sort of used the full extremities of the voice. I think one of the, I like the use of Prince, because he did primarily sing up there a lot of times. Another person to recognize would be Philip Bailey.
Yes.
If we're talking about in the contemporary sense.
Yep.
Philip Bailey for sure. And then, of course, all of those old school doo-wop groups. But not even doo-wop. What's Eddie Kendrick of The Temptations.
Yeah.
Hands down. So that's always been sort of a part of black singing. That guy that sings high. Even if you go to the fictional groups like the Five Heartbeats Choir Boy. That's, that would be a contemporary commercial countertenor. And then in terms of tenors, of course, we know of in opera, of Luciano Pavarotti. That's the name that everybody gets to know. But then I'm trying to think of who's a real R&B tenor. Everybody that's coming to mind is more of a baritone. Usher is pretty much a tenor. Now, Chris Brown is a tenor.
See, I thought Usher was an alto. I really did.
Usher, not quite. Usher is definitely a tenor. And the other thing is, too, with commercial music, some of these lines get blurred. So I personally don't always categorize the commercial singers in the same way as I would categorize like more classical musical theater leaning singers, because everybody's going to sing everything. Right.
But here's the thing that I think I want to interject is that I don't think they're able to sustain the line they're able to hold in the song as one or the other. And I think from my ear, I kind of go, okay, you sang that phrase here. Are you going to go back to that same phrase in the same tone? And often they don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's because there's a different, I wouldn't say that there's more freedom. There's a different type of freedom in being able to switch back and forth. That's why I was saying about Prince. You could do, you have a song like Kiss where he sings in the falsetto the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a song like When Doves Cry, and he's like in his lower register. And then he might pop up there really quickly and then, and like he'll come back and he'll go back down. So you get to vary it so much more, but even that is not even uncommon to singers of the Baroque era, honestly. Because singers of the Baroque era were singing some of everything too. You could sing low, you could sing high, you could vary it however you wanted to. And again, that's also very akin to who we are as black folks, of like, if I can do it all, might as well. And that's the thing that even when I teach, thinking about that, because especially for my young men who may be baritones or basses, in most black churches, especially now, there's no baritone or bass part. You're going to sing tenor.
Mm.
And if there's no altos, you might end up having to sing alto. And the sopranos are weak, you might end up singing soprano. We learn in black church, and this is across the board, we learn to sing every part. Whatever's missing, you're going to sing it. and that's developed our voices in a different way. It's developed the mix. It's developed the sounds and the colors, the strength. the blends. I mean, there's so many things that we develop differently than some of our counterparts because we have no choice but to just stick in and sing what we can.
So I want to remind people that we're talking to Mr. Patrick, and you're listening to Bridges Live with Dr. Paul. And I just want to say what a gift it is to have so many of my guests who have so many different passions and blessings and gifts that they give out to the world. And what you're listening to today is not just the understanding of what Mr. Patrick's voice comes from, but we're going to get right into right now. It was something you said that just hit me like, and I want to use it metaphorically, like a cord across the head. It was like, there goes me. And in the black culture, we have so many influences that we could have seen, may have seen, but not often seen, and said to ourselves, there goes me. Your grandmother said it, you said it, and is that why you got into teaching and working in the community? Because we need to, as an African American community, as a culture, to say, you also are within me because I am you and you are me.
That is 100% correct. Everything about that. I think, and when I tie this up, you'll really understand how that happened. Because again, if I hadn't heard those singers from Morgan, if I hadn't seen those PBS specials, and then Mr. Krim takes me, and Mr. Krim then conditions me to go to Morgan. Now, the other thing that I was in, it's been HBCU, it's been community, it's been the village. It was also the Negro Spiritual that had me singing classical music.
Mm-hmm.
What got it? So my first pieces that he gave me, oh my God, there's so many dots, there's so many circles that are just always connecting. The first pieces that he gave me, Verdi Tutto Amor from that big yellow book, 24 Italian Arias by Francesco Durante, and then the other was Deep River, arranged by Harry T. Burley. And I took particularly Deep River. Oh, and he also gave me O Thou That Tellest Good Tidings to Zion from Handel's Messiah. Particularly Deep River, I took to all the competitions. So I did Deep River in the Grady-Rayam Prize in Sacred Music from the Negro Spiritual Scholarship Foundation, and I was the first winner for the state of Tennessee. In that, I think that was 2006. I took Deep River to... And I think in that year I did it, yes. Roland Carter was one of the judges.
Wow.
And that's going to be important later on.
Yeah.
I took Deep River to the NAACP ACT-SO, and I was in ACT-SO, National ACT-SO in 2005 and 2006. And then, of course, that got me auditions and got me into school. Got me into all these places. And I remember getting into all of these different schools, conservatories, PWIs, HBCUs, and Mr. Krim said, you're going to Morgan. You're going to go to Morgan. I was like, yeah, you're right. And he was like, nobody's going to love you and care for you and nurture you like Morgan. He also said, if you went to conservatory, because at the time I wanted to sing gospel and musical theater and opera and do like music business, I was just all over the place, as kids are. And he was like, yeah, you need to go to Morgan. I'm not going to see, if you go to conservatory like that, you're not going to be focused, and there's going to be some, they're not going to want all of that. But you need to go somewhere that's going to embrace
all of that.
You trying all of that and doing all of that. And make no mistake, my program at Morgan was a classical program. But the teachers did not shun you singing the other stuff. They just said, okay, let's just look at how your technique is going to go when you sing the gospel. When you try to, let's work on that to also meld it. So the first day I got to Morgan was the day when I heard the voices in that choir room. Well, there was two moments, of course, being at ACT-SO and hearing other black people around the country that sang like that. And they weren't just singing spirituals. They sang full arias. I remember a girl from LaGuardia, from New York. She sang Queen of the Night. And I was like, oh. So here I was, the only countertenor in the competition, and here she was this soprano from New York singing clean. We thought we were going to win. We didn't. But it was like, oh, wow, there are black people like me. I'm not weird.
No.
Even though I went to performing arts high school, I was one of the only ones at my high school that was seriously pursuing, more seriously pursuing and studying classical music. They could all do it, and all do it, but I was the only one that was like, I really want to do this. So I wasn't weird. I was like, okay, that's great. That made me say, I can do this. When I got to Morgan and I heard those voices, I said, yeah, I'm going to sing like that for the rest of my life. Now, all through that time, I go to Morgan, I come out of Morgan in 2012, I did my master's at Boston University, and that was an interesting space. So now is where, now though I had done competitions and plenty of auditions while I was at Morgan, even in those competitions, I was one of the only black people. In those auditions, in those audition rooms, and in those workshops and things I was in, again, I was one of the only black people. But the difference was, once I left from New York, or once I left from D.C., or wherever I was doing that program or that thing, I went back to Baltimore. I went back to Morgan. I went back to home. And I had my village there of people who were just as talented, if not more.
Right.
That looked like me. When I got out of Morgan, and now I'm in Boston, at Boston University, and I was fortunate that one of my best friends from Morgan, Ben Taylor, who's a baritone, having a really fine career, Ben and I were at BU together. But we were basically 2 of 4 in our program. And almost, I want to say, maybe 2 of 10, and I might be being generous, in the School of Music. There were more folks in the college than the School of Theater, but particularly the School of Music, there weren't that many black folks. And I didn't have the same sort of immediate village around me.
Right.
In Boston. So there was a culture shock. There was sort of there were lots of feelings of loneliness. It was a very interesting sort of space to be in. I don't discount my time at BU. I think that it was necessary, and I had a wonderful experience with my teachers and colleagues overall. But
I think that's why I do Bridges Live, because I know people feel lonely in so many different spaces. And I know I want my podcast and the information, and that's why I go Understanding Information Action, because when the person who hears the one podcast, they're like, I am not alone. Whether I've been abused, whether I've been struggling, it doesn't matter what space I do the podcast in, I want people to know that you're not alone. And we often feel lonely because we don't hear the testimonials of someone who said, man, that was me, or that is me. So go ahead, finish. That could be you.
But even that, I think, too, and kind of to a point, again, talking about village and community and also those feelings of loneliness, and kind of tying that in. Yes, I've talked about how I'm from Nashville, and all of these things are tied in with black this and black greatness, and HBCUs being at the very much at the forefront, of the black church being a part. But I also was not the most comfortable around black people.
Well,
I grew up growing up, this wasn't a fault of my mother's. It was more so my own, in a sense, because I grew up in the suburbs, and I sort of, there was a lot of sort of respectability that I started to develop in myself.
Mm-hmm.
Of like, oh, those folks, I'm not comfortable with those kind of
right,
things.
Right.
My family always joked with me, being in Memphis, because Memphis is a very black city. And I was like, I wasn't as comfortable in Memphis. It was like, oh, this isn't, I'm used to more white people being around, and if it was white, it was better, or it was safer, things like that. But leaving Nashville and going to Baltimore, being in East Baltimore, everything about that changed. It was like I had culture shock going there, but I also discovered myself.
Right.
Discovered family, community in a different way. And so now when I visit Memphis and visit these other places, I'm like, yo, I'm good. What, you got me?
Yeah.
But then because I know I'm safe. I know what that looks like. I don't look at that and look down on those folks. I'm like, no, I know where those folks come from, and I'm here to help and support that and see how we can build that up as opposed to taking it out of the city and taking it out of the hood. Like, I want to make the hood great, right?
Yep, embrace it. Yeah.
Bring the hood up, like, for us. So then going from Baltimore to Boston, there was culture shock because now this is a city that caters to the white folks and to its international community and educational and tech community way more than Baltimore does. And I said, okay, this is interesting. So that's where a lot of those feelings came because I really couldn't find, and also because Boston you don't have an HBCU in Boston. No. Right? You don't have.
They won't allow it.
And they, because Boston sees itself, it's such a, it's the, I want to say it's probably the largest college town in the country. And it sees itself as being a great space of education and being open-minded in culture, which there is a lot of culture and wonderful things happening there. But what often happens is for people to say, oh, we're so educated that we don't see the same pressures.
Right.
And they don't see color. We don't see the same things as other people. We're above that. And
it's bullshit, like, but it's but that's what they're trying to say.
That's what they try to say. It's like, actually, you really do. And because it's how you treat me.
Yep.
In fact, I will tell this, and I'm not even ashamed to tell it. I remember when I was at BU. So what happened when I started school about 2 weeks late. I started because I was coming off of a tour. So I went into BU booked. I had just come from my first Young Artist program. I was the first countertenor with Opera Saratoga in upstate New York. And then I did a tour with Harlem Opera Theater of Latin America. So I was coming off of the tour, and I started grad school. By this time, everybody's they've already had orientation. I went to 1 day of orientation because I had to do my tour, but then I came on back, and I started school a week late. So everybody's known each other and gotten to hang out. The only people that I knew were, of course, my best friend Ben and a black soprano, Kristen Young, who's a dear friend of mine, amazing singer. And, of course, Kristen is black, and we had sung a concert for our Harlem Opera Theater together. That was it. So, of course, the first people that I go hang out with are these two black singers, because those are the people I know. Then there was a biracial tenor, who's a good friend, Jordan, and he was there. So those are the people I talked to for real, because I only knew them. And then later on, I would hang out with other people, and they would say, oh, well, let's go see this, and they would, let's go watch this, and let's read this, and I would say, oh, no, I don't get that. I don't really get that. Or I would make a reference to something that would happen in black church or HBCUs, and I'd always have to explain it. So it would be, well, I don't get that. And I say, well, at HBCUs, okay, da, 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 da.
Right,
or,
right.
Or in black church, this happens. Okay, so somebody goes to, I don't even know who, because that's how good my brother is. He just went ahead and handled it. But somebody goes to Ben, my best friend and roommate, and says, so Patrick's kind of like the black guy, huh? And Ben read them for filth. He got them right together. But then he came back and told me, he was like, you should probably just know and be aware of that. And I was like, these children don't faze me.
Right.
Because it's them that don't understand. And so when I'm giving you a historical, sociological, anthropological explanation of everything in life, and you expect me to fall into what you do, it's similar to TV shows. I don't think, I loved Friends. I was like, yeah, Friends didn't do anything for me. But Martin was my ish. And they were like, oh, I didn't like Martin. Well, it wasn't for you.
It wasn't for you.
So, like, these certain things, those were the kind of little microaggressions that we had. And even in the singing, because Boston's an early music town, and I'm a countertenor. So I would coach with these early music luminaries, and they would say, oh, you have a very lovely sound, but it's really, really rich, and there's a lot of color. Can you straight tone? Can you straight tone? Can you pull back off some of that? And I was like, what?
They want to take away the color.
They didn't want me to have. They they wanted these straight tone sounds. I was like, honey, no, I'm not doing that. And so the way that early music was presented to me, that made me not want to do it. I really resisted it because there were these people who were so arrogant and so pompous. And there were experiences later that made me say, oh, this isn't so bad, because they presented to me these in early music. And of course, being in early music, I am definitely always 90 or 80% of the time, because there has been a couple of times where I'm not the only one. But 80 to 90% of the time, I am the only black person in the room, especially in early music. So if you think it's bad in opera and classical music, it's even worse in early music.
Well, Mr. Patrick, I tell you, you and I can talk, and we'll continue to talk, but we're going to cut the podcast so people can catch us on another time. And I agree with being the only person in the room, having community, having someone to see you, and to wrap it all up, to have those experiences. But most of the part, I think it's a blessing and a gift and a God's blessing that you were able to share your testimonial to someone who can hear this and say, I need to talk to Patrick because I feel lonely, and what do I do from here? Because not many people can have those mentors who can hear those people sing. I mean, I still want to talk to you about Roger, Roland Carter. My goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Because I, as a composer in my own mind, he was like, you talk about someone who influenced. So, but if people want to get a hold of you and talk to you and converse with you and just ask you questions, how can they do that?
Certainly. So you can follow me on my social media. So on Twitter and Instagram, I am Patrick Dailey, last name Dailey, CT, as in countertenor, Patrick Dailey, CT, on Twitter and Instagram. My website is www.patrickdaileyct.com for all the things. And then you can also find me on Facebook. My fan page, you just search Patrick Dailey, Patrick Dailey, countertenor. And yeah, just like that, and I will follow up with you.
Thank you so much. And, of course, this will be attached to the podcast for people to just click on the link on the podcast. But remember, you can always reach me at drpaulholistic.science.com. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening to Bridges Live and listening to Mr. Patrick Dailey talk about his life, his experience. And let you know, I think collectively we'll both tell you, you're not alone. And I don't want you to think you're alone. And especially if you're a young black boy or young black person in a community that doesn't support the music anymore like it used to, reach out to Mr. Patrick and say, what do I do from here? I live in this city, this town, this place, and what can I do from here? Because I want Bridges Live to be one of a resource, but also to put you into understanding, information, action. God bless. You want to leave us off with a little bit of anything, Mr. Patrick? Anything you want to let us know?
Yeah, I think that you've really summed it up in that, you're never alone. There's always someone out there that is like you, and then even how you navigate these spaces is going to really be a help to how somebody else does it too. Always, I tell the students all the time, build and understand your why you do what you do. Have it rooted in something greater than yourself. Have it rooted in something that will last beyond you, whether your name is known or not. Don't chase the name, don't chase the fame, but, really pursue the excellence of it. Even if you're going to be on great stages, why are you going to be on great stages? Is that for yourself? Is that for your family? Is that for your community? Is that for the next generation? Is that for the progress of the art and the craft, to build and produce other opportunities? Again, figure out and develop your why. And then that's going to drive you to doing all the great things that you have. I mean, there's so much that people are like, oh, you've accomplished so much, but there's so much that I still haven't done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also because there's so much work to do for other people.
That's right.
And when you really see that it's not about you and it's never about you, you actually build and become greater in your art or in your development, in your work, because it takes the pressure off of you being seen. So, yeah, I just say, find your why, develop your why. Always stay around people that love you. And if they don't love you, if they don't encourage you to try it, then they really don't care.
Amen.
Their intentions are not the purest. So just find your why and stay around love.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you so much.